Today's webinar is tips for getting your design business published. It's super important. I'm really excited everybody's here to learn from this webinar. And we have Elizabeth here. I'm super excited about it. Just to go over some housekeeping before we get started. If you do have any questions during the presentation, type them into the chat box and we'll be answering them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. So put your answers in there. Definitely feel free to ask us whatever you need to help your business move forward. So just to get to know us, we're Home Designer Marketing. We help design professionals transform their businesses and brands to attract their dream clients, sell their projects for more, stay current online, and get their time back with automated systems. So there's me, there's Ashley. We have a whole team of, I call them A players, to help you move your business to the next step and get transformed. Here is Elizabeth. I'm gonna let her introduce herself. I'm so excited to have her here today.
Thank you, Deborah. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Ethridge McGann, and I am the founder of Ethridge McGann Group. And like it says, we help interior design firms and home furnishing brands to tell their stories and reach their goals with PR and marketing. We take a really nice boutique approach. So I'm excited to dig in, especially to PR, which is kind of a mystery, I think, to a lot of people. So we're going to break it down for you all today.
Yep, absolutely. Just to give you some examples of what we do when we transform businesses. In fact, I know Tana's here. She's one of the businesses we have worked with. Here's a logo before and after for Bowerbirds, a website before and afterwards. And I always like to think, like, if you were a customer and you had never had a conversation with with an interior designer business, and you were just going online looking at your business, who would you trust more? Like a company like this or a company like this? Who would you pay more for, like their services? A company like this or like this, right? So your online brand really makes a difference. Here is another before and after for Tana here. And this was her website before. Like, she does absolutely beautiful work, and like her online marketing needs to represent that. So here is the after. We also set her up on Mydoma. So that gives you a little taste of what we do. And here, today's agenda, we're going to be talking about PR. So I'm so excited to have this conversation because I just feel like people don't really understand, the value of it, or they just don't understand how to do it. So what is PR? Building trust with PR, looking at your goals, like, is PR the right thing to do? Marketing, photography, national and regional publications, like why you might want one over the other, print, is it working, is it not, doing it yourself, getting the ROI out of PR, editors, after being published, like what should you do afterwards, and responding to press. So we're going to go over so many different areas of PR. So first, we're going to just start out talking about, like, what is PR? So Elizabeth, I'd love you to give us your thoughts.
Of course. So just starting with the basics, PR, I'm sure you all know, stands for public relations. And it's really about sharing your company story, your brand with the public audience. So it's what the public knows about you. And relations is in the word. So it's really about relationships a lot. So keep that in mind when you think about PR. So that's just starting off easy. That's what PR is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is so important for building trust online. We're just, even if you're validating your company, it's so
Completely.
important. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So how PR can help you build trust for your business. So what tips
Sure.
would you give us for that?
Yeah. I mean, Deborah, as you were just saying, PR really is one of the best ways to build trust for your business, because it's one thing for you to say in your marketing materials, oh, so-and-so design firm is fabulous, but to have a well-regarded magazine, blog, anyone else who is a tastemaker in the industry saying that you are, a fantastic designer really makes a big difference, especially for a field like interior design, where it is subjective and some of your clients may think that they like your design work, but to have that extra credibility of, oh, they have the stamp of approval from an editor really makes a difference. And it also just tells your brand story in a more personal way sometimes than with sales material. So it gets you that much closer to that key marketing goal, which I hope everyone knows, which is to have people know you, like you, and trust you. PR is so powerful in all three of those things.
Yeah, I love the know, like, and trust.
Yes.
It's like so important.
Yeah.
Building trust for your business and being an authority in your space, PR absolutely does that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your goal for PR? And I always think with any type of marketing, focusing on your goals first is like number one.
Yeah. It's so important to be strategic, especially with the media landscape today. It can be very overwhelming. So it's important to be very honest with yourself. And what is your goal? Is it sort of like the ego of seeing your work in a magazine? That's fine, but be honest with yourself. Is it to get better clients? Is it to help close the deal and have that credibility? Where do you want your clients to come from? What type of clients? I mean, this is the opportunity to show your design firm, to attract the type of clients that you want, where they are, with what responds to them. So you don't have to do everything, but you do have to be strategic about what you're doing and that it's supporting your company goals and not just keeping up with the influencers or something, which may be spinning your wheels.
Yeah, I definitely think to get the ROI from your PR, you need to really think about your goals and set up a strategy. For example, like if you really want to focus on bathrooms and you really want to focus on like certain services or certain types of clients, making sure that the magazine that you're getting published in has the right type of followers and is promoting, like if I'm looking for a modern bath and I'm a client, that's where I'm hanging out. I'm reading that magazine, right? So looking at your ideal client, looking at your services, where are they hanging out? How can I get in front of them? How can I be an authority?
Exactly.
It's really good. When should you start thinking about pitching a project?
This is a really good question, because I think this is something that people don't think about enough. It's such a long game with PR. So you should start thinking about pitching your project as soon as you get your project. So I'm serious with that. Even when you're designing your project, it can be helpful and actually really great for your creativity to imagine what magazine it would be in, and where would this look right? And to even have that in your head when you're at the drawing table. And then it's crucial to have that in your head when you go to photograph the project. And it's important that you photograph the project at the right time, before it gets overrun with the kids and the dogs and all of that. And to really be laying the groundwork, getting the before pictures, because maybe it's an HGTV before and after story, just thinking through, keeping your options open, keeping everything organized, and having the end goal in mind will, I think, make you create a more beautiful project, and also help you when you get to the end to be very strategic. And it's not going to be like, oh, what do I do now? You'll have been working towards this. So that part will come a lot more easily.
Yeah, I think that is a huge tip. I mean, I actually hadn't even thought through that, but
Most people haven't. It's not just you, Debra. It's unusual.
Yeah. When you said that to me, I was just like, wow, like that makes so much sense. Like right when you're getting a project, or even thinking about, gosh, this would be a great project to get, like even a step before that. Like, if I want to be in this magazine to get in front of these people with these type of services, I need this type of job or project. So maybe I'm going to intentionally go look for that type of client, that type of project.
Totally. It can sort of level, it can be a level up exercise where it's helping you to set goals when you have your eye on the prize and it's something more tangible. So it's not just about getting in the magazine. It's about having goals that may help you get better projects, make you create better designs. It's a good way of thinking about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And then instead of just doing the project and then an afterthought, oh, this turned out kind of nice, maybe I should try to enter it. It's a totally different process.
Yeah.
So be more intentional. That's the lesson that I'm learning. How to use PR in your marketing.
Oh, so where do I begin here? I mean, everywhere. It's hard to get published, so you want to take advantage of that. So, it should be on your website. Debra, you know this. You
absolutely.
A beautiful press page. It can be in the marketing materials that you design specifically for like one client in that first meeting. You might even bring a few magazines that you have been in to show them, to flip through. Having a tangible magazine is super cool. You can use it in your email marketing. You can use it in your social media. You can mail copies of a magazine to stay in touch with past clients and prospective clients. I mean, it really should integrate into all of your marketing. It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you could even add it into your email signature. Like, just think of all the touch points, every possible, like most leads or prospects, it takes 6 or 7 touch points before they actually will work with you. So think about like social media, your email list, your website, your email signature, like, everywhere that you can get in front of them with that information.
Exactly.
I don't have a lot of professional photos. Can I still get published? Oh my gosh. I wish everybody knew the answer to this already.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to invest in anything, and Debra and I both agree on this, and we're not photographers.
Yes.
If you're going to invest in anything, it's professional photography. I mean, it's just basic. You're an interior designer. People need to see your work before they hire you. You want your work to look as beautiful as possible. So it's very difficult not to get published without professional photos. Honestly, it's easier to get published without professional photos if you're already established and you don't have like any new projects. People might already know you and reach out to you to say, oh, what's your favorite paint color? And like, can you tell me your 5 best, nightstands or something like that? But if you're new, you really need imagery to tell who you are. You can kind of fake it out a little bit. Like, if you haven't done you know, a huge estate, every room. Use your own house, create a little vignette, even a mood board. It can be a corner. It doesn't have to be everything. But if you're showing your point of view and being consistent with that, and take a photography course yourself just to get started. I mean, it's literally everything is the photography.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, in fact, you know, when somebody comes to me and they don't have good photography, we can't really help them very much, you know, not as much as we would like. Like if somebody's invested in photography, they come to us, we can absolutely transform their business and make them look gorgeous online. But like, you know, we can only do so much if the photos are bad. And let me add one thing here too, that somebody came to me a while ago and they were like, well, I don't think that like the website design really made a difference, because once they see my work, they would love their work. And yes, definitely the work sells, but if they've never had a conversation with you, they might not get past that homepage to even see your work, right? So they work together. You need the photography, and then you need a professionally designed online presence. You need both of them, and good content, all of them working together.
The whole package. It's the
Yeah.
first impression.
Yeah. How do I find a photographer? Because this is really important.
So take out your notebooks, ladies and gentlemen, because the best way to find a photographer is to look at the magazines or the blogs that you want to be in and see who the photographers are. It's very simple. What some people don't realize is there are some photographers out there who do a little bit of PR, and they can be very helpful because they have the relationships. Like I said in the beginning, PR, public relations, relationships. So an editor, they're humans. They're just like us. You know, if they know you, like you, and trust you, they're going to be more likely to feature you than if it's like just a cold call. So if you have a project photographed by someone that they've worked with a lot, you know, that will help to get you in the door if you don't know people there. And then it's also just a complementary creative vision. They like the style of that photographer. It makes sense in their pages. And when you talk to photographers, ask them, you know, do you help with PR? You know, would you make an introduction on my behalf? Some are into that and might even have a line item to charge for that. Some are just want to photograph. So those are all helpful things to figure out as you're deciding who to work with.
That is such a good tip. Like, I just love that tip. Yeah, so, you know, look at the magazine, see who the photographers are, contact them, build relationships. You know, I think that's such a good tip, especially if you see a photographer that's consistently doing work that's published.
Yes.
Like, I think that's a huge tip. What do designers need to do before they can start trying to get published?
Well, we obviously photography. I hope everyone's
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
Photography is very important. So you definitely need to have beautiful portfolio, you know, nicely photographed. Sometimes magazines will send their photographer to photograph it, but that's less and less the case, and typically just national magazines. So it's always better if you have photos they can use. And then you also have to have a beautiful website. You need to have a beautiful logo. You need to have your headshot. You need to have your story. What sets you apart from all of the other designers? And it's not making pretty rooms, because everyone does that. So you really need to be very clear on your brand, and your brand needs to look good, because any editor is going to check out your website, your Instagram, all of those things before they decide to put you in their magazine. And especially if they don't know you. So if they're going there and it's like, ooh, you know, this project is nice, but like, what's up with that? You know, I don't know if this is of the caliber. your website really needs to be in order. And then when you get the press, you want your website to look great for when people come to visit you. So you just need to take care of all of that stuff before you can even think about getting published.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to, I know Tana is online today, but I'm just going to highlight her a little bit because when she came to us, she has been published so many times. Like, she is just an amazing designer. So like, here was her page. You know, it was super messy and it was not showing off like how professional she is and her work. So, you know, laying it out so it was organized and it was, you know, just as beautiful as her work was, you know, is key to positioning you as an authority. Like, if you're positioned as an authority, people are going to be, you know, want to work with you. They're going to want to be like, they're even going to be okay being on a waiting list to work with you, and they're going to pay you more for your services. Like, there's a huge amount of trust that is built there for being an authority. But if they come to your website and it is, you know, messy and unorganized, that is also not going to build the authority that you need in order to get paid more and bring on those, you know, clients that you want. Exactly. Is it better to have national publications feature you or regional? This is a really good question.
It is a really good question, and it goes back to your goals and your strategy. It's harder to get into a national publication. You know, you have to be realistic with your goals. You know, are you really going to get that project in Architectural Digest if it doesn't have a celebrity? You know, just not having a celebrity makes it tough. You know, and a lot of magazines have fewer issues. Domino just announced they're done with print, but their regional publications are doing better than the nationals. So it's easier to get into a regional publication. They have beautiful editorial content, and I mean, it is great to be in a national magazine, and I love it when that happens for my clients. But if your goal is to get better clients, a regional publication is actually better than a national publication. Because what happens is when people see a national publication, even if they've got, you know, a huge budget, all of that, it feels like sort of fantasy. It doesn't feel like someone that you're going to kind of pick up the phone and call. Whereas if it's someone in your backyard, you're like, oh yeah, I could just like meet that designer for coffee. This would make sense. It's much more likely to lead to a transaction to be in a regional publication. Then also with the regional publication, you know, media, they do events, show houses, you know, it's so much more than just the magazine. So you can really integrate into the community, which helps you to get in front of more clients. So I would say if your goal is to get better clients, go to a regional magazine. If you have the goal of just like being published in a national, like you just want that, you know, go for that. But you do need to be realistic and not spin your wheels. And, you know, look in the magazine and see if your project would make sense in there. So I hope that's helpful to kind of look at the both again.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I also think when you're looking at your goals, like, are you targeting a really small local area? Mm-hmm. Or are you willing to work like a little bit more remote, right? Because, you know, maybe it just doesn't make sense because your projects are smaller and you're working more local to be in a national publication. Like, think about, are you going to need those leads or even be able to serve them?
Right.
Right.
Or sometimes too, you want to, this is a little bit of a different answer, but there are lifestyle magazines. Sometimes those are great to strive for rather than the design magazines all the time, because it's the trade reading the design magazine. So it can be nice to have an interior design story and a more lifestyle magazine so that you're actually getting in front of that audience and not just looking good in comparison to your peers.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at those goals and seeing where is your ideal client hanging out? What are they reading? What are they getting? What are they interested in? And that's where you want to be. Those are the publications you want to be in.
And I would also just add too, it's really great, like back to the website press page, to make sure you have a variety. So if you've been in one magazine, like all the time, start pitching to different magazines, because people are savvy. They're going to look at that and be like, okay, so this one editor likes this designer, you know, whereas if you go to the press page and you see, oh, they've been in all of these different magazines, regional, national, lifestyle, it's really smart to be strategic and to not just keep going to the same people. You know, you want to make it look like everyone thinks you're fabulous.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I see that Tana said she loves targeting lifestyle magazines for return. So thank you, Tana. Yeah. Is print dead? This is a good one. I know I specialized in print for over, I don't know, probably 20 years. So
yeah, I mean, well, print has changed. Print is part of the bigger picture. So when it comes to PR, yes, I mean, it's social media that used to not exist, you know, when we both started in this field.
Yeah.
There, you know, are great digital sites that have excellent editorial, which didn't used to be the case as much. But print is not dead. There is something very powerful about holding on to a tangible magazine with a glossy cover. It's really something nice to deliver to a client, to mail to someone, to bring to a meeting. I love print so much that even if you're in, like, you know, our AD online or something, you might even print that out, you know, and do a little mailing or put it in like a press kit, just because it's just like our brain, you know, to hold on to something. Online can feel ephemeral with PR. So I do think it's important. Print is still very important, but online is amazing as well. And it all looks the same to some extent on a website. It's really more for those high touch in-person meetings where it's nice to be able to hold a magazine or mail a magazine.
Yeah, absolutely. I just can't say enough how much trust it builds, and you know, PR, and then I also put like awards in that same kind of bucket, and like just some kind of background story about myself. This month will be 33 years in business, so about 20 years I did mostly print. I won a ton of awards for like big companies like Apple, Intel, and all these big companies. And I didn't even have to sell for many, many years, because everybody just knew that like I was an award-winning designer and they just wanted to work with me. And it was a super easy sell. So I know that awards are a little bit different than PR, but not that much.
Not really.
I really think they're like in the like authority kind of, you know, just positioning you as an authority. And it can really benefit your business by, like I said before, I know I'm saying it again, but helping you get paid more, helping you get better clients. Those are the two big ones.
And to add on to that, for my clients who have already been published a lot, I rarely have to pitch for them. Editors are coming to me and saying, oh, you know, can we interview so-and-so for this or get a quote for that? I mean, obviously I still have to pitch if there's a new project. They don't know when, you know, someone just finished something. But once you're an authority in this space, like you've experienced, Debra, people come to you. And especially if you've helped them out with their deadlines before, if you're quick and responsive, they know they can go to you. And that's also sort of the benefit of working with a publicist too, because they know, you know, there's a roster of designers there, so they can go to the publicist if they need something quick and just kind of get an answer. We'll talk about that more later. Sort of
And I do think that you know, in some ways it's kind of like dating or interviewing where, you know, you need to learn the process and you need to get your foot a little bit wet. So like, you know, I would love the people in this webinar, like to really think about if they haven't been published, like maybe I should start thinking about getting published. Where would that be? And then start thinking about like maybe my next project, I'll try to think intentionally about getting published, you know, and then walking through that whole thing and think of, oh, maybe I'll start in a really small magazine, you know, because you're going to learn like how to get published, what to do, what not to do, and like how I can get published in better like magazines and stuff like that. So think about maybe just setting a small goal for yourself and trying it and learning, even if maybe you get turned down, like learn, okay, if you get turned down, what did they want? Like, what could have I done differently? And so I could get published maybe next time. Instead of just taking a no, really ask them questions of like, you know, thank you for letting me know, you know, what could have I done different? What are you looking for? You know, and then maybe you can set up your next project to get published. So
Exactly.
don't be afraid of like taking some steps to find out more and learn how to do it, you know, just like I feel like interviewing or dating is the same thing. You need to go out there and practice before you become really good at it. Can you do PR for yourself or do you need to hire someone? This is also a really good question.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I would say even with my clients, I think you should always be doing PR for yourself, even if you have a publicist, because it goes back to relationships. And as much as you as a designer can cultivate relationships with the editors, that will always benefit you. So you should always be doing PR for yourself. It's great to work with a publicist because that's their job. So you know it's going to get done. Whereas you might get distracted and it'll be harder to make a priority. Also, it can be very overwhelming with all of the different options. So it's nice to work with an expert who knows the landscape, knows all the opportunities. I mean, like I said before, an editor is not going to call every single designer and talk about, oh, we have a color issue, but they'll go to the publicist because they know they're casting a wide net. So I just have more access to information than a designer would, which benefits you for PR. And then also just knowing how to, you know, do a pitch, how to send the images, you know, to make sure that someone is really going to get back to things on time. And it can especially show houses and awards. It's a lot of work. There's a lot to go through. So if you don't have the time, that's helpful. And then another big thing is sometimes it can be a little bit awkward to sell yourself, or it can be awkward for an editor to give feedback on like what they're looking for and, you know, why that's not helpful, which, as Debra was saying before, is so important to get that feedback. A lot of editors don't feel comfortable giving that directly to the designer because it can be sensitive, but they will say that to me. So it's just nice to have a buffer where it's not, you know, so direct and it can be a little too sensitive on both sides.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, if you are doing it yourself, then really try to be open to feedback and, you know, communicate that to them. But I could see that, you know, when you design something, you become like, it becomes part of you, you know, you can get really attached to it and it's hard to take, you know, maybe criticism or feedback, you know, not necessarily criticism, but, you know, you could take it that way versus feedback. How can I learn from this? How can I do better? And as a designer myself, I'm always, you know, not an interior designer, but a illustrator, a graphic designer, is like trying to be open to learning from it and taking feedback without feeling like you're being criticized, right?
Totally.
So attacked. So having that right kind of mindset.
And I'm like a cheerleader for my clients too. So it's nice to have someone sort of in your court who is keeping you motivated, who gets you back up, who can give you the feedback in a way that's helpful and motivate you. I mean, a lot of my clients are solopreneurs, so it's just helpful to have, someone there kind of cheering you on and talking things through.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice benefit. Again, the relationship of just having another person who you trust to guide you through this is probably the most critical.
Yeah, definitely having the experience to even say, well, this is typically what they're publishing.
Right.
Like, not that you want to make your design like the same as everybody else's, but there might be trends that they're liking or that they tend to like publish more, and maybe that's not the right publication, right? Where you can steer them in a different one.
Right. Or tell them, I mean, I work with my clients, even if they don't have photography, I'll help with them with photographers and styling. So it might even be a conversation of like, okay, if you really want to get into this magazine, this is how you need to style this project, and it's not necessarily how your homeowner is going to live in it, but it's what's going to translate on the magazine pages. So it's looking at everything and really figuring out what you need to do to reach those goals. And it's very strategic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a really great tip, that like working with somebody like you has experience to know like what they're looking for, even if it's not what the homeowner's going to, how they want it as the end result. But, if you're in a room too, it's so different than if you're taking a photo of it.
Completely.
Right? Because how do you, show it off? You don't need to show the whole room. You just are trying to, you're just trying to tell a story, you're trying to get an overall feeling, an emotional response from them.
Exactly. And so many projects where my clients, that their client hasn't finished. They didn't do the last layer of accessories. Maybe there are even some furniture pieces missing. They will bring in furnishings, art, accessories, load up everything. And you can get partners to help with that because everyone wants to be published. So a vendor, artists, anyone, I'll tag you on Instagram, you'll be featured in the magazine. So be smart about it. You don't have to be spending all of your own money. You can take things on loan. I used to be director of marketing for a really big furnishings company, and we would lend out products all the time because it was great advertising for us to be listed in the resources. So try not to get overwhelmed or look at things as obstacles. There are so many ways around this to be able to reach your goals. You just have to be smart and strategic about it.
That is such a good tip. I just love that tip. I think that is great because I know companies would be like, yes, we would love to, it helps their marketing too.
Exactly. And that's another thing that that's another thing that a publicist can do is help to create conversations where it's win-win for everyone. So, okay, here's the photo shoot. This is a win for you. It's a win for me. I also like to look at it that way when communicating with editors is, this is something to support their magazine. They have a job to do, which is to create compelling content. And so you can look at them as like, you're their assistant. Here's, a story, I just made your life easier rather than like, oh, do this for me. Just kind of flip the script and think about how your work can help others. And that in turn will help you. Even something like a magazine interview. I was working with a client on a magazine interview, and we listed all of these local artists and home furnishing stores to mention in the interview. And then they shared, all of these places shared that on their Instagram. And so not only was it just really nice and they appreciated it, but it exponentially increase the awareness of that article because she was crediting all of these other places that she
Yeah.
didn't necessarily need to.
Yeah, that is also such a great tip, because then you're getting in front of their audiences, right? And that's just a great way to even promote yourself even more with the article. I love that conversation and those tips. So how to get an ROI from your PR.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've kind of talked about this already, but what we haven't talked about is advertising. And advertising should go hand in hand with PR. And this is another thing where regional magazines can be better at reaching your goals, because it's thoughtful to think about where you spend your advertising dollars in conjunction with where you want to be published an editorial. Because even though it's often church and state, people at magazines are humans, you know, and the advertisements pay their salaries, you know? So if you're advertising, if you're supporting the magazine and advertising there, they are going to be more likely to feature your work. So rather than place an ad somewhere, you know, where you're not going to get an editorial, you know, boost from it, it's important to think about doing those things hand in hand and showing support to the magazines that do feature you, but maybe not being in the same issue. You know, your ad is maybe in the issue that your editorial wasn't in. So wherever you're spending money, to think about how it supports your PR, your photographer. Is it a random photographer, or does it support, you know, your likelihood of getting published in the dream magazine that you want to be published in?
That's a great tip. And I also want you guys to think about, again, multiple touches. So like being featured, like in the magazine, and then maybe the next month you're like an ad, or the next couple of months, and then maybe you're featured again. You know, think about staying in front of them multiple times, so it's not just they see you once, they might forget about you. You just think about, I know it sounds like, you know, a lot, but think about, how can I stay in front of them 6 or 7 times?
So true.
You know, then you get people that are like, wow, I've been seeing you here and here and here and here, and like I need to, like, I want to do this project and I'm thinking of you. How should you approach editors?
Good question. So like I said before, I like to approach editors like I work for them and I'm the best assistant ever. So that means being organized, you know, not sharing 200 images that they have to sift through, being very respectful of their time, pitching one at a time, not pitching the same project to every magazine. That is a huge faux pas. You want to give first right of refusal. And then again, which I keep on saying, relationships. So you want to just genuinely cultivate relationships with editors. Don't want to be annoying or clingy or like, you know, weird, but you want to, if possible, get to know them. So that means if they're doing a panel talk, you go to the panel talk. Maybe you send your pitch the next day. Oh, I attended your panel talk. Loved hearing what you had to say. I thought you'd be interested in this project. They're on Instagram. Comment on their posts, like their posts, follow them. See where, you know, they love horses, you love horses. You know, find the human in them, because they will be more likely to publish you if they know you, like you, and trust you. So having the relationship, and then just being the very best assistant, being quick, sending things in the way they ask for, you know, getting things in before their deadline, respectful of time. A publicist can help with letting you know like what the rules of engagement are, or doing it on your behalf. But those are some main things to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely make it easy for them to work with you.
Exactly.
You know,
so they come back to you. It's not just one and done. You know,
Yeah.
you want them to come back to you because you were so easy to work with again and again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if they're finding that it takes too much time and like it's too much work to work with you versus somebody else, they're going to ask somebody else.
Right. And then also if you're sharing the news, but being respectful of their guidelines. So a lot of print magazines, you're not allowed to share the images until 30 days after the magazine has been out. But then at that point, to tag them and credit them and thank them, they're a business too. That helps them too. So
Yeah.
if they're seeing that, and if it's online, that's a big deal. If they're seeing that stories that feature review are getting all of these clicks, that's really good because
Yeah.
you're putting it in your email newsletter and all of these things. So you want to thank them also after the story. A handwritten note goes such a long way. Just be a really nice human,
Yeah.
that's the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I always personally, I like to have the give first kind of attitude and the, make it easy, as much as possible to work with you. So I love the idea of asking them their process, ask them to get their process for them to email it to you and then follow their process or ask them more questions like, how can I make this step easy for you? I think those are great tips and give first, like don't just try to like ask and like you said, building a relationship, it's a relationship where you want to be published again, you want to be friends with them, you want to help them do their job. I think those are great tips.
Yeah, and again with the repeat relationship thing too, I think everyone knows this, but don't give anyone a hard time, like, oh, why didn't you use this image for the cover instead of that image?
Yeah.
You don't want to criticize their coverage of you because then you can like guarantee they're never going to write about you again. So just something like that. I've never had anyone do that. I just heard someone say that once and I was like, okay, just to make sure, I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Unpublished, now what? What's the next step?
Put it on your website. So we mentioned this, the email newsletter, the social media, the client meetings, having a press kit, the sending out the magazine to clients with past clients with a handwritten note, anything to stay on the radar, because people will get that and they'll be like, oh yeah, my friend just moved into a new house. I should have them call Debbie Designer. And they probably wouldn't have made that connection had they not gotten the magazine in the mail. So just go, all of the platforms, put it everywhere. You work so hard to get published, like do something with it.
And I also think that like after you've gotten published, think like you talked about, think about getting published again. Think about staying in front of them. Think about checking in on, with that editor, continually like nurture that relationship or even ask them, how can I help you? What are you looking for? How can I help you? And just kind of having that give first kind of attitude, instead of just take, because that gets old.
Yeah. Very nice.
How to get organized to respond to press.
I do a lot of this for my clients. It's making sure you have a Dropbox account and that it's organized and that you have your brand story, the short version, the longer version, you've got your headshot so that if anyone needs anything, it's like I said before, once you start getting published, people will just reach out to you. And oftentimes they have a very short deadline. So you need to respond and you might be on vacation when it happens. And if it's just like, oh, this is here and my assistant can just send it or my publicist can just send it. It's just getting your ducks in a row. Time is everything when it comes to PR. So you just have to be super organized, especially with images. Images can be a nightmare. Making sure you credit the photographer correctly. That is not cool if you can't remember who photographed it or things got mixed up. So just time sensitivity and being organized.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, like, even sometimes when people are sending us photos, like not having the photos like properly labeled and stuff, you know, sure, that the designer knows what project, what room and everything, but don't expect somebody else to be a mind reader. They might get all
Exactly.
these photos and have no idea what project is going to what, or what, you know.
Or
you
low
need-
res. I mean, you deal with that less
Oh.
on the website, but for
Yeah.
print, it's hugely important. You know, so sending the wrong size. I'm shocked by how many designers like can't even tell the difference between low res and high res, and that is going to annoy people. You know.
Yeah.
So you have to, if you don't know how to do that, find someone who can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because all print needs to be 300 DPI. And, you know, if you're doing like online, it like you can't load up photos like that online, otherwise they'll slow down your website too much. So, but absolutely, like, can't have anything less than 300 DPI. And so just really making sure that you have a good photographer that's taking the photos, like, so you can like make them large enough, because especially for like a full page or something like that.
Yeah, but vice versa, when you're pitching, you don't want to be sending huge TIFF files that are going to like crash the editor's computer when they open up. So you want to send smaller files and say, oh, we have high res available, you know, and what you can even do just to give a teaser, because some people, if they don't know you, they won't even click on that Dropbox link, but embed a couple of the very best images in the body of the email. So it's like those wow stunner images. So they're like, ooh, I want to see more of that. And, you know, keep it to like 10. Don't make people, you know, unless they're like wanting to see the whole project, you can say there are more images and then you can show them everything. But you just have to be organized and respectful of time.
Such a great tip. Thank you so much. This has been such a good conversation. Again, I'm home designer marketing, Debra Scarpa. And if you're interested in talking to us about branding, logos, websites, social media, you can book a free consultation at homedesignermarketing.com/schedule, or follow us on Instagram at Home Designer Marketing. And then Elizabeth, if you have any questions, you can reach out to her. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Debra. And I would love to hear from anyone from this panel. You can do a complimentary consultation just to hear about what your goals are. You can email me, I'm on Instagram. And yeah, I just love talking with designers. So it'd be fun to hear from some of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we now have a Q&A. So I know that
I see them coming in.
Yeah, there's some questions coming in, and feel free to type your question in there. And the first one, what should you be asking for photo, sorry, it's moving, and use of images?
So if you're asking, oh, this is a good point. So I'm not sure if you mean for the photographer or for the client, but I'll sort of answer both. So in your contract, if you do not already, go back to your contract and make sure that it has in there that you can use your project images of the client's home in your marketing materials and in PR. That needs to be in there, because it's such a drag when you go to have that conversation of the best project you've ever done and you can't show anyone. You can share with the client, you know, you're going to be anonymous. You know, some magazines like to use the people in the projects. Most of them don't need to. They don't have to say the town. So that can help to alleviate any concerns that your clients may have. And so just going back to this question, what should you be asking for photo credit and usage of the images? Have legal docs signed with limitations for usage, et cetera. So I think for the photographer contract, You always want to make sure that you're crediting the photographer. You don't really need to, like on your website, but on Instagram, you should, in magazines, you should, you should have them credit them. Sometimes if it's a story where they're not doing all of the photo credits, just like let the photographer know that. And another important thing, a lot of photographers do contracts where if there is a photo fee from the magazine, they want to be paid that. So if the magazine has a budget for like $500 to pay the photographer, you need to link up, even if you purchase the photographs from the photographer, you need to like link them up so that they can get paid that photo fee. It can get confusing, quite frankly. And sometimes photographers are like, oh, don't worry about that photo fee. If it's going to mess up getting you published, if that's going to like be a barrier, they'll generally waive it. So it can be a little bit, flexible. But the main thing is just to be very clear with your photographer on how it works. This is another area where I do this a lot for my clients, where they don't have to get into that nitty-gritty contract ickiness with the photographer, and I manage that. So I'm making sure that everyone's happy, because photographers will get frustrated, and you don't want to frustrate anyone ever. Oh, more questions. And how about agreements with the publications for usage? Okay, so the magazine, the agreement with the magazine. Typically, in my experience, you don't really have to worry about how the magazine is using it. It's good if they're using your image. So you don't need to worry about, don't use my image a certain way. You want them to use it. The only time it gets tricky is I've had projects where they've been published in like 4 different magazines, but you have to be very strategic about when you publish it, because some magazines will not publish a project if it's been in another magazine, and some will. And oftentimes awards, most awards, I think they're okay if it's been published before, but some aren't. So you'll the way it normally works is be in a regional magazine first, then a national magazine, then an award. So you don't want to enter the award first when they don't care if you've been published before, but now it's messed it up for all of the magazine features. So it's super important. Sometimes I have clients who are so excited to enter for an award, and it's like, hold back. You want to get the magazine and the award. So get the editorial coverage first and then enter the award. But you just have to know what the rules are for everything, because it's not the same for all the magazines, not all of the awards. I hope that clarifies. There's a lot to dig into there. It can be really confusing.
I'd say the one thing that I've really learned from this conversation, Elizabeth, with you is just like how much strategy is involved. And, there's definitely just so many little things, little tips that really can make a difference. And that is why hiring somebody, that can help with PR definitely can help move the needle.
Yeah, it can be political, especially if there are magazines that compete with each other. So it's very careful. You don't want to upset anyone. So I'm glad that you picked up on that, Debra, because there's a lot of strategy involved.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about it being political, which makes sense.
We can go on for a really long time.
like the competition. Is like if they're competing kind of against each other, and you're being featured in one, and you become like, kind of like really known for like working with them, it's going to be hard to.
It's just nice to play nice with everyone and have a press page that's like, ooh, everyone loves this designer, but there is a lot to think about. Creative people can be sensitive. So just, keeping everyone happy and being respectful. This is so fun to talk about. I can go on forever. So you just have to tell me like when to shut up.
Yeah. Well, we're almost like at the end here. I know we do need to wrap it up, but Oh, Tana has a question asking if there's certain publications you typically work with.
Yeah, so most of my clients are on the East Coast in Connecticut and New York. And there's just a ton of design magazines in that area. So I know them all very well. And, over decades of working with people, you become
Yeah.
friends,
Yeah.
they know my son and these types of things. So, I would say that the best magazines are the ones where you can have relationships and where they're in your community. I have relationships with the national magazines as well. And it's fun to see people at High Point and all that stuff. But for actually making a difference in the type of client that you get, it's great to have a really famous magazine on your press page. It's just like, look, I did that. But it's really powerful to be known in your community as a top designer in your community. So I like to focus on the community magazines because there are more of them. You can be in them more often. There are events, there are show houses. They can just offer a lot more to my clients than like when a celebrity client comes up, which can be harder, if you don't have one all the time,
Yeah.
which most people don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such a great conversation, and thank you everybody for showing up, and thank you so much, Elizabeth, for having this conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.